like to welcome you to the depot tonight, and knowing that it is winter time and it's not really cold, but there's probably a real comfy chair at home that you could be sitting in, and I am so happy you're sitting in these chairs, at least for a little while. So thank you for coming. Other members of the 250 that are here, Doug, Brian, and Adam are also here. So thank you for coming, and I'm going to turn it over to 4 people that we're very happy to have talk to us about, I always get this wrong, natural resources in our county, and possibly mostly in our the specific area. Oh, and more people welcome. So I think Steve Pierce with MTA is going to start off, and then Christina and Jon are going to talk about G5 and Camp Grier, and then Shannon with Destination McDowell is going to talk a little bit about tourism.
All right. Well, thank you, Kathy, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Steve Pierce. I'm president of the McDowell Trails Association, and I've always enjoyed hiking and being in the outdoors, hiking at national parks on vacations and things like that. But after I retired from teaching, I started hiking on a weekly basis. And most of the hikes were Asheville and West. There were a few trails around here, but not a whole lot. But as we all know now, that story is changing. We have new trails being developed right here, and that's fueling the economic growth that we're seeing around outdoor recreation. But I wanted to share with you, when I first started, when I moved here in 1974, yeah, there we go. I bought a trail map, 100 favorite trails of the Great Smokies and Carolina Blue Ridge. And it's this very large format. I'm going to fold it and put it over there. Anyone wants to see it. But 100 trails, and several of them in this area and all around. But this is the map that I used when I first hiked Catawba Falls in probably 1978. And I found it, I read the description, and I remember this, and I put it up on the screen. I'm going to read it to you. Now this is the description from this map on how to get there. Cross bridge on foot, walk up farm road, 0.25 mile, quarter of a mile to ford. Cross river, walk upstream, passing abandoned powerhouse and dam. Easy ascent. When road runs out after 20 minutes and becomes a stream bed, go 70 paces. Then turn sharply with an exclamation point, and then south across stream, continuing south for 175 paces, keeping straight left at each junction to the base of Lower Catawba Falls, a graceful cascading type. Note turns just made before stream to falls, easy to go wrong on return. Now here's the kicker. Upper Falls, plunging into a large pool, are reached in 30 minutes on steep, slippery trail climbing beside Lower Falls. And then right below that, easy. And I remember trying to count those paces to make sure I didn't miss turns and everything. And so, of course, that was then. And, of course, this is now. Now we have huge parking area. Back then you had to park along the road and cross private property to get to the actual trail as it was. But now, of course, we have this wonderful infrastructure to get you safely up to the Upper Falls without the slippery climbing on the falls. And by the way, the same hike is on the updated version. This is a 2020 version of 100 favorite trails. This, I think, 1987, I think, was the last time this was done. This was redone by Carolina Mountain Club and the Great Smoky Mountains Association. And of course, Catawba Falls is on there. This was done before the infrastructure, but it just takes you to the Lower Falls. We didn't say anything about, climb the waterfall to get to the Upper Falls, and I guarantee it doesn't say easy. But anyway, when I saw that, I thought, wow. And I got to thinking about, as we we think about North Carolina and so forth. North Carolina, how many have heard North Carolina, the Good Road State? Does everybody remember? Yeah. That campaign actually started in the 1920s and went up even up into the 1960s. They talked about the Good Road State. And, well, you can say, well, I guess we're still pretty good. We have pretty good roads. But one thing with the year of the trail in 2023, a new emphasis was North Carolina, the Great Trail State. And so that's a shift in thinking from, okay, roads and everything we got. It's a great trail state. And to develop trails, outdoor recreation. And so with that, we have 14 state trails established by the state legislature, and we have this trail network across the state of North Carolina. The one that a lot of people can easily identify, and it's the colors really aren't showing up there, but the Mountains of Sea Trail, going from the Smokies out to the Outer Banks as one. But there are all these others. But if you notice something, right, if you can see over where it says Lake James, you can see that. Let me zoom in on that, because that is right at McDowell County, isn't it? Everything in that circle is pretty much McDowell County. Notice the number of state trails that all come together right where we are. Okay, you've got the Fontaflora State Trail, of course the Mountains of Sea Trail. You have the Wilderness Gateway Trail, which is going to go from South Mountain State Park to Chimney Rock State Park, along the southern part of McDowell County, northern part of Rutherford County. So it's in that area. And then, of course, the Over Mountain Victory State Trail. And you'll notice that all of that all come together in and around McDowell County. We are sitting on a nexus, a hub of state trails. And then there's one more trail that is a local trail, starting in Marion, the Peavine Trail, which is north-south, which has potential. We can connect all these trails. So when we connect all these trails, then there's even more reason for people to come to McDowell County and for outdoor recreation, for hiking. So you can tell we're a little bit excited about this, right? It's just a wonderful thing. And so, let me talk just a little bit about the McDowell Trails Association. We've been around for 20 years now. We're getting ready to celebrate. And we don't take credit for all the trails in McDowell County, but we feel like we've had a hand in several of them. When we were founded in 2005, 2006, we started working with the city on the Joseph McDowell Greenway and phases 1 and 2. That included Round Hill, that has the cemetery plots for the McDowells and the Carsons. We helped the city with the riverbank stabilization along the Greenway, which has protected the Greenway from being washed down to the Catawba River. Of course, the Peavine Rail Trail, the Point Lookout Trail, just right a little bit to our west, with McDowell County establishing Greenlee Park as another little segment of the Fontaflora State Trail. And of course, working with the Friends of the Fontaflora on the Fontaflora State Trail. So a lot that we've been involved in, and we want to just keep on moving ahead with a lot of these things. All of these aren't finished. We have more work to do with the Peavine, and so I'll talk about that in just a minute. You can go to our website if you have our rack card. I think there's some over there. But our mission is just to partner with municipal governments, counties, other nonprofits on advocating for building and maintaining trails in McDowell County. And our vision, I'm not going to read through all that. You can find that on our website. And but I do want just to, y'all know, we are an all volunteer organization, and we are a membership organization, and membership supports our operations. One of the things, though, that I think is most important is, and I think everyone would agree, not one entity cannot build trails and maintain trails. It takes a partnership, and we're very fortunate to have strong partners in McDowell County. And so it can't be done without partnerships. And with our state trail partnerships, the Great Trail State Coalition, of course, city, county, town of Old Fort, and many others. So just real briefly, we do monthly hikes. So if you want to get out on some trails, either in McDowell County or close in the region, it's usually the first Saturday of each month. We have our events card that you can pick up there if you don't have one, and see what's coming up with that. We try not to make them too strenuous, but good opportunity for folks to get out on the trails. We also partnered with the Trails and Trains event here, the festival here. We sponsored Jennifer Farr Davis on the Thursday evening kickoff. If some of you were able to come to that, we also sponsored a couple hikes during that. We've partnered with Barefoot Baby Foundation on some family hikes, and this past year, Alyssa Hughes, who she and her husband Matt are the main ones behind the Barefoot Baby Foundation, put together a bear hunt adventure. And as you can see, they had the story, and the kids could enact going through grass and the river and so forth. And at the end, the kids got a bear, and well, it was very well attended. Good family event. We're trying to do things more to get families involved, let them see also outdoor recreation is for everybody, not just for those of us who like to get out and ride on the trails or hike on the trails. It's also just getting out with families. And so then we also had the family day at the Corpening YMCA, and brought in a lot of folks for that. And then Great Trail State Day, we did a local hike that day in October. So what about trail news? What's coming up? What are the things that we see that we're working on? The one is the Peavine Rail Trail. If you read in the paper, the city got a $500,000 Part F grant to extend the Peavine about a mile from Baldwin Avenue down to Jacktown Road. There is the railroad trestle that needs some work, but we're hoping that we can still preserve that. There's also FEMA money for rehabilitation on the parts that have been damaged. And we help with the help of a Rotary grant. We established some signage there at the historic Moorhead Cemetery. And so it tells the story of the cemetery. It's right off the Peavine. And so we had a dedication for that. So the next steps would be to complete the extension to Jacktown Road. And then the next phase would then be taking the Peavine Trail to McDowell Tech. And when that's done, just think you could start in Marion, you could ride your bike to McDowell Tech and never be on a road. And the other thing that we're starting to gear up for right now is Universal Park, which is 300 acres of land behind the Universal building at McDowell Tech. There's a couple ponds there. We've had a partnership meeting with McDowell Tech and McDowell County, the City of Marion, and the MTA. And what we want to do is we want to develop a master plan, build the Two Ponds Trail, parking amenities, and then hike and bike trails on that 300 acres of land. Some of it's going up a mountain, so it's good terrain there. That would be another outdoor recreation place, venue. There's already a disc golf course there on that part of just south of I-40. And so we're excited about that. And then, of course, the Fontaflora State Trail, working with the Friends of the Fontaflora State Trail. We think that the Black Bear Campground and Park, the section of the trail that goes through there, has been submitted for official designation. That'll put about another mile of trail that we can say, another mile of trail is designated. And then, of course, the trail here in Old Fort. There's a 4-phase complex, Old Fort complex right now. The Trailhead Park is complete, but not officially open. It's where the dog park is, because phase 2 is the access from Town Road. I think I have a map here. Yeah, it's that light colored there that goes down to Curtis Creek. That will be the next section, and there is an RTP grant that is underway right now. I think they're ready to start construction on that part. And then the third and fourth park is how we get across Curtis Creek, and then how we connect over to Greenlee Road. So we're real excited about that. Hopefully that work can be done in the next, not too far off in the future. And then the last piece of what's in the works is working with Destination McDowell on a comprehensive trail map. It's in process now. We have a lot of people that say, well, anyway, do you have a map of all the trails? You know, kind of like, you have a map of all the trails. And well, we will. We'll have a map to give them, and it will, it's one that unfolds, easy to carry, hopefully easy to read, and then on the back there will be descriptions of key trails, and there'll be a link to where they can get more information on each trail. So that will be specific to McDowell County, which I think will be a great addition to getting the word out about trails in our area. So as I said, we are celebrating our 20th year, and we decided we would start that with a little hike on New Year's Day. And that's a picture of our New Year's Day hike. We had 70 people come out and hike at the Black Bear Campground and Park. Beautiful day. If you remember, New Year's Day was not very January-like. And so we felt what a great way to start our 20th year. And some of the things that we will doing we are going to have our monthly hike series, but this year we're going to do a passport. And everybody can get their passport stamp for each hike that they do. And then there'll be prizes and things you can get at completing 3, 6, 9, and 12 hikes. So that's a new wrinkle this time. We are having a kickoff event in Marion at the Community Building on February 26th. It is a trail expo. And February is Valentine's month, so we're thinking, make a date with the trail. And then when someone said, but wait a minute, you're at the end of the month, how are you working that in? We said, well, we'll come up with something like, did your Valentine fizzle? Don't worry, trails sizzle. Make a date with the trail. So we're going to go with that. So we're going to have, I think we've got about 12 or 14 of our trail partners coming just to talk about what they're doing. I know G5 is going to be there, and Destination McDowell is going to be there. All the state trail folks in this area will be there, so that'll be a good time to come out and just get information about trails in our area and in our region. May, June, we're going to have a 20-year celebration. We think it's going to be here in Old Fort, so we're looking forward to that. We're going to have an October event with the Great Trail State Day, and of course our Rock and Roller, April 25th, cycling event, again, here in Old Fort. And then we're going to have Family Day trail activity with Barefoot Baby as well. We're setting a date on that. So we're excited about a lot of things that we'll do. So I'm going to end with a plug for the March hike, and this will tie it right back to this area and to our history. We're going to do the Stagecoach Trail that goes out of the picnic area, Old Fort picnic area, and it connects with the Point Lookout Trail, but it also turns off and follows Swannanoa Creek. It is the old stagecoach road that was active. I did a little bit of research. These things I know they're hard to read, but in the late 1700s up until the time of the railroad was completed, the stagecoach, that was the way to get to Asheville and beyond. And so we're going to follow some of that trail. We probably won't get all the way to Ridgecrest. It gets pretty rugged and crosses the creek several times. But there's a lot of history. There's some Civil War history there. There is a Confederate grave and a Union grave along that trail. It has been used, as I say, since Revolutionary times and probably before that. And as I was thinking about trails, the roads we walk on or drive on, the trails we walk on, many of them were trails that were used by Native Americans, as connecting their villages, towns, or settlements. A lot of them were game trails. So we are just another layer of trails, and ours for recreation, but we're following the footsteps of going way back. And so I always try to keep that in mind. So those are some of the things that are they're going on with McDowell Trails Association. As I say, we're looking forward to a continued bright future for trails and outdoor recreation in McDowell County. I think that's it. Unless there's any questions, I pass the baton on to the next.
All right. I'm Christina Redman. I'm the Director of Public Land Initiatives for Camp Grier. And I have to say, Steve, your Valentine's date excites me because my relationship with public lands has been the most stable one in my entire life. So it sounds like a good date. But my role, I get to work with G5. I get to work with our 2 race production companies. And really my focus is bringing folks to McDowell County to enjoy our public lands, whether it's building trail, whether it's producing races, advocating for public land policies, knowing what's going on, working with land managers like the Forest Service. And so Kathy asked me to give a little bit of a history of Camp Grier and G5, how that came about, and then John's going to share some about what's actually going on now. And so we're working hard. As you know, Helene did a lot of damage, not only to our town, but to our national forest, and there's a lot of miles that need to be repaired, but we just, through a grant or an agreement with the Forest Service, we were able to hire 12 new people with G5 to expand our team. It was a team of 2, and myself assisting when I could to now we've got a lot of people working who are coming in to work on our trails, recover the grandfather district from Helene. But a little bit of history. Camp Grier started in 1952. It's 650 acres. Who's been to Camp Grier? Okay, who hasn't been to Camp Grier? Let me see if that's more people. So we want to get you up there, but Camp Grier was bought in the 50s, or in 1950 by Mr. Grier. The Presbytery of Concord had a camp at Lake Norman, and Duke Power was coming and buying that property, and he thought ahead and said, we need a place for our youth to recreate in the outdoors. And so he bought this property, and in 1950 set up a sawmill. Volunteers came and used the lumber and the trees on the property to build the cabins and the buildings, and by 1952 it was established as the outdoor ministry of the Presbyterian Church of USA. And so it for generations has served as a place to get youth outdoors, adults outdoors, retreats, conferences, obviously summer camp, and that began to grow. But really in the 90s and early 2000s, attendance started to dip as we saw in Old Fort, right? As jobs moved out, people couldn't send their children to summer camp, and so that really dipped. And in 2013, Jason McDougald, our executive director, joined the team at Camp Grier, and he was like, we've got to do something. In order to save Camp Grier, we've got to save Old Fort, we've got to save trails and outdoor recreation. And so he really revamped the recreation aspect of camp, getting kids out, taking them to places like Linville Gorge for climbing, up to the Green River for kayaking, but there was so much that was right here in Old Fort. And so there was really a vision there to how do we connect Old Fort to trails. And so in 2016, Jason began engaging with the Forest Service to talk about this idea. And in 2018, G5 was established. In 2022, many of you were probably there. We opened the first 6 miles of the Gateway Trails. And so there's just this thread. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of fundraising, a lot of grants that had to be written. I won't bore you with all those details. But that's it. Because so at the heart of Camp Grier, people are like, this is a summer camp, right? It's a Christian summer camp. What does it have to do with the public and the trails? But our mission at Camp Grier is to provide opportunities for connection, service, celebration, and renewal in nature. And so that for us isn't just inside of our gates, it's outside as well, and giving back to the community. In the wake of Helene, that meant opening of our doors and serving meals and providing laundry services and showers and lodging, working with the town to provide resources, rebuilding homes. And so we're all about connecting people with nature. And so I'll let Jon, because he was there in the early days of G5 inception, talk about where we kind of took it from there and have moved on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Jon Lane, the director of G5 Trail Collective. I came here from Asheville to Old Fort as a volunteer. As Steve was saying, volunteers are very important. And when I heard about Jason's initiative to bring trails in this area, I knew of a few trails, most namely Kasuma and Heartbreak Ridge. They're very famous in the outdoor economy. But I didn't know anything else other than maybe Catawba Falls as well too. But I didn't know of anything else in the area, so that gained my interest to be here. And I came as a volunteer to help. These trails like Heartbreak and Kasuma are trails that were built in the late 1930s by the CCC, and they just weren't maintained and taken care of. There were some hikers and runners that did want to take care of it, and they brought it up to the Forest Service, and that is another way that G5 kind of formed together through these runners. Hearing all that interest brought me here to be part of that help. It really drove my heart to be here to maintain and take care of these trails. And what Christina said, that Jason was trying to secure funding with the Forest Service to build more trails. When that happened, we had a whole big map to look at outside of Old Fort. We're truly a real trail town. If you think of Brevard or Asheville, yes, there's trails around those towns, but Old Fort is literally out our back door, the escarpment that goes up to Mount Mitchell, and it was really an opportunity for recreation that hasn't been tapped. The Forest Service on the recreation side understood that and wanted to partner to make that, but the first thing they said is that you got to maintain the trails that are here before you can build new ones. With that said, that's when Jason and some running buddies of his started working on the trails. That's when I heard about it. I came down to help. We gathered, all kinds of users, whether hunters or mountain bikers or runners or hikers, to take care of the trails. After showing that initiative, the Forest Service really got on board that we could do something, and Jason was able to secure some more funding to build the new trails. My role went from being a volunteer to actually overseeing the trail builds. I come from a construction background. I was a general contractor for 20 years in the Asheville area, and so I found myself from fixing the trails to actually contracting the trails out to the trail builders and the local builders of the parking lot and the Gateway Trail system. And from there, we had 6 miles, and we made a plan to build 42 miles in this area with the Forest Service. But the problem was getting the funding to do it all. Jason's a very hard worker, and he's found grants in many different pockets, and we finally worked with the state, who then recognized the Old Fort could grow with the economy if we had these trails here. And with that recognition, we were funded $2.5 million to do the trails, to offer more of a workforce for youth in the Old Fort area, and to build the trails. With that, I again became a volunteer, decided to retire my construction career and start working the operations here down in G5. And since those few years, we were working on our 21st mile right before Helene hit. In fact, that that very week, as it was raining before Helene actually here, we were checking off 6 miles of trails that we had just put together. None of us knew what was going to happen entirely with Helene, and of course we all knew what happened. Since then, a year and a half later, we were able to finish those trail builds. We were able to recover almost all the 22 miles that we built. These trails are designed and constructed, purposely built for recreation and purposely built to divert water. And so most of them did divert water, except for our Meadows Trail that's along Curtis Creek. Obviously, half of that trail has gotten removed from the flood there. We had several other trails that did have landslides. Most notably is the Lower Heartbreak Ridge Trail. This is the trail that Jason envisioned, that we would have a trail from the Blue Ridge Parkway that came all the way down into Old Fort. This is about 12 miles of hiking or biking from the parkway to Old Fort. There's no other trail like this on the East Coast, and actually in the West, in the Rockies, it actually has more elevation drop than there. Even though those are much higher elevation, we're talking 4,000 feet from the Blue Ridge Parkway down into Old Fort, and a lot of trails out west don't drop that far in elevation. And we thought that would really bring a lot of people here to see and experience that trail from all over. That trail actually did receive some landslides because of a fire back in 2016. The soils were very fragile. There's very steep side slopes for the trail itself. But right now, currently, we, as of yesterday, we just rebuilt that trail. We're still cleaning up and hope that trail comes back to life here maybe at the end of the month, and get the word out to folks to come and visit and see this trail, do some hikes, do some mountain biking. I think it'll really take off more once the parkway finishes that construction up there past Mount Mitchell. But the other trail is Newberry Creek Trail that we were trying to reroute away from the creek, which we successfully did before Helene, but unfortunately there were some massive landslides there that destroyed the old trail, and we're currently working on rerouting that as well. Since Helene has hit, we worked out an agreement with the Forest Service that's pretty much unheard of anywhere in the Forest Service. The Forest Service was awarded $2 billion, which is a huge amount for any government agency to own here. I don't know if you all remember last year, the chief of the Forest Service visited Old Fort and made that proclamation that he was going to help us out, and so they gave us their word and they came through. With the money that we've acquired through the state to do our Old Fort Trail project, we had to put everything on hold and sign a new agreement with the Forest Service. And what that has done is that, based on our past and our history of building these trails and contracting these trails, we were given the opportunity to help rebuild all the trails, specifically in McDowell County, but actually throughout the Grandfather Ranger District. So we're talking from basically the Cosuma Trail all the way up to Blowing Rock. That is the Grandfather Ranger District in the Pisgah National Forest. And we were awarded a $34 million agreement to not only replace almost 100 miles of trails, but to fix many miles of roads. There was a bridge at the North Fork of the Catawba River up near Woodlawn. We're going to replace that as well. And with that money, we were able to hire staff and not just have me out there doing all the work. So now we have appropriate staff to work with these contracts. We will hire engineers for the roads, have contracts with that. We now have 2 trail crews within G5 where we go around and do all the maintenance along with volunteers, and the crews will also be repairing the trails. So we're going to be very busy at work. We just hired them last month, and we're now in training, and really hope to get going here by March out into the National Forest and bring these trails back to life. So we're really excited about having all these different positions and have the capacity to do this. It's a very fortunate thing to have this partnership with the government the way we have it. It's a very rare opportunity, but I think what it is that the Forest Service really sees the value of Old Fort and what it can bring to this town, what the trails can do, and take everything to a new level that's not been seen here before. So we're really proud of that, having this opportunity to do this. We're in agreement now for the next 5 years to try to bring back 100 miles of restored trail. At the same time, we'll also bring back our Old Fort Trail project and continue to build. We have roughly 20 miles of trail to still build. We'll have to slow down this project because the roads to these trails are not really passable at the moment. And so once we contract our Forest Service roads to get rebuilt, then we can continue on with our Old Fort Trail project. So it's going to be a mixed bag of doing that project for Old Fort, for restoring the existing trails and the legacy trails that have existed here since the late 30s to Old Fort. And then we're going to move on up towards Woodlawn, North Cove, Wilson Creek, Linville Gorge, Blowing Rock, all those areas over the next few years with our staff and with other contractors and other partner organizations that we're helping. The organizations are Wild South, you're all familiar with them, Southern Appalachian Wilderness Stewards, which is another organization that works in Linville Gorge, and then the North Carolina Bicycle Alliance up in Boone, North Carolina, and then the Blue Ridge Backcountry Horsemen. These are some of our biggest partners that we're aiming to have trails for all users. And that, as Christina said, we want trails for everybody. That's our biggest goal. So currently we are finishing up Lower Heartbreak Ridge, which we're super excited about. We had some damage the recently built Catawba Falls, and we are about to finish that work here in the next 6 months at the very top of the upper falls and some lower areas where there's some landslides. We're planning to rebuild a trail up in Linville Falls. It's basically a connector trail from a parking lot to the Falls Trail, to give people better access that way. We're currently exploring rebuilding the trails off Woods Mountain. So these are part of the Mountains to Sea Trail, Betsy's Ridge, if you all are familiar with that. I'm sorry I don't have a map. But we're looking to work on that. And currently, our biggest project we're really excited of is having the G5 trail crews and volunteers to work on Snook's Nose. Who's familiar with Snook's Nose? Anyone been up there, cussed up there? It's a really wonderful trail. Unfortunately, the bottom of it had several landslides, and we've put together a reroute that comes straight out of the Curtis Creek campground, and we're going to rebuild that with our trail crews and our volunteers starting in February, and I hope to have that done in the spring. And that's kind of what will be happening over the next few years, where our crews will be working on some trails, but the projects are so large, we'll be contracting those trails to other builders. And so we'll have a mix of trail crew folks. We're going to have people building roads. It's going to be very busy off Curtis Creek for the next few years. In Curtis Creek, we will not personally be rebuilding part of that road, but that is a Department of Transportation build that we hope to see in the next few years. There is a bridge up there that goes up to the parkway that's been heavily impacted by the flooding, so it's not safe to drive. It is open to hiking, though, or riding your bicycle and seeing the area. And the campground will open this year, I believe April 1st, so that'll be a nice addition to the town. I will say, if anyone is interested in other campgrounds, there is a newer campground off Curtis Creek Road called the Wonderland Resort. And if you haven't seen it, it's a really amazing, I guess I would call it a destination campground, where they have a sauna and a workout room and a fishing pond and outdoor kitchen.
Glamping.
It's glamping, but it's really neat. There's also some primitive camping too.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to bring in more folks, have more camping opportunities in the area before we can get these roads open. If you all have seen probably one of the most famous pictures in the Helene disaster was the Jarrett Creek Bridge that crosses over Curtis Creek, where the bridge itself was flipped over almost intact. It was just amazing what the water could do. The weakness of that bridge was its foundation and not the bridge itself, not knowing a storm like that could impact it as much. We've overseen but not have contracted the new bridge work, but I was out there yesterday and the bridge is completely done. It's actually paved. It's made out of a gigantic piece of concrete, big as I've ever seen. And it took 2 cranes to bring the pieces of the bridges together, and it's really amazing just to go see it. With that said, having bridge repaired and put there, we now have access to Jarrett Creek Road, which is about an 11-mile long road that goes all the way over to the Heartbreak Ridge. That's going to help us get to these trails and start repairing them, and we'll do some temporary fixes on the Jarrett Creek Road. On top of that, we now can work on our Gateway parking lot. It was a 100-space parking lot with bathrooms and changing rooms. It, of course, got flooded as well. We have a lot of extra sand and silt on there, so it's going to have to be rebuilt, not entirely, but we will contract that out here very soon, and maybe by summer that will be an open parking lot. In the meantime, we built, I called it an emergency parking lot, the Meadows parking lot. That's next to the Gateway parking lot. In our master plan for G5, we intend to make that area another parking lot to just account for future use, make space for equestrian trailer parking, and for events. We see that we have races out there on the trails, whether they're running or biking, and people need space to park. And that's what we've seen in the Pisgah, is that there is no parking for people to go places. And that's one of our main goals, is to provide that parking throughout the area so everyone can get to where they need to get conveniently and not interfering with locals who live in that area. So.
Yeah, and like Steve said and John said, like so much of what we do is about partnerships, right? And input for everyone. Public land users are everyone from a hiker to biking, fishing, equestrian use, hunters, you name it. And so we're really trying to work with different organizations to get input, to build trails. So if any of you are part of organizations who are interested in partnering and coming out and volunteering or input, part of our team is being able to go out. We're working with schools. We get to have school groups out and teach kids about the importance of public lands. I grew up with a dad that taught me to fish and hike and camp, but not every kid gets that, right? And so we're really trying to make the outdoors accessible. This parking lot, John was talking about the Gateway. Part of that is not everyone wants to park somewhere and have a hike to get to the hike, right? You know, you go to Linville Gorge or some areas and you park here, but you've got a hike, and then you get to the trail. I personally don't love hiking road. I want to be on the trail. And so we're all about accessibility. And if you were out at the Meadows Trail, you know, that was one of the most accessible trails. You know, we'll be building that back out and things like that. But it really comes back to outdoors for everyone. And we're here because we love outdoors and the recreation. We live in a beautiful place. And so whether it's a local who just wants to walk their dog every morning, or people are driving from Raleigh or Charlotte and visiting now our businesses and spending money in our town, that's what we're all about, is to help visitation, which will segue into Shannon. But I didn't grow up in this area. I've been in this area 20 years, but I grew up outside of Raleigh, but camped up here every summer, that as soon as I was getting out of the house, I was going to the mountains. And so not everyone gets to live here, but we want to create a place for everyone to recreate, whatever that level of recreation is, whether it's just sticking your feet in a creek, or running up the steps of Catawba Falls with a weighted vest. I saw someone doing that the other day. Whatever that is that's our mission, and that's, you know, the joy of us all getting to work together, because there's so many varying levels of recreationists, of trails. They all need to be taken care of and maintained, and we can't do it all. And so probably all of us will give an invitation of some way to be involved. So if you don't want to ask a question in front of everyone, come find us afterwards to see how you or your business or your kids or your grandkids can be involved. So I'll pass it over to you. But
Thank you. Thank you guys for being great partners of Destination McDowell, with the trail map and the rock and roller event, and of course all the partnership with Catawba Falls and the trail build out. It has been really great to work with these groups. So I'm going to try to cover how we got here, right? What is tourism? What does that look like? And I'm definitely no authority. I'm not a historian or anything, but I did have a lot of fun researching some of the projects and finding out some new facts. And I do love history and have sort of always taken an interest in that. So it was fun to spend a couple hours looking through Forest Service archives and National Park Service. And so we will do our best to explain some of that for you guys. First of all, we'll start with early tourism, right? Relatively speaking, we're 250 years into the country, but I guess tourism's been around longer than that in some form. But modern tourism, as we know it in McDowell County, is really relatively new. The largest attraction in the county, Linville Caverns, really only opened in 1939. Before that, it was just a private entity, and you could go in, at the permission of the landowner. So that's relatively new. But there were things that happened before that I can talk about. As far back as the 1800s, the mid-1800s, the Southern Appalachian Mountains were really known as a botanical adventure, really. You had famous naturalists such as Asa Gray, Andrew Michaud, John Muir. All these people came over here and traveled our hills and our trails. John William Bartram, you've probably heard of these areas. And these famous people, you probably recognize John Muir more from Yosemite, but he really traveled in these areas before he ventured out there. And he was amazed at what he saw, and so were many other people. And that was really the foundation, I think, of what tourism is about in the mountains, is people coming up to explore and to visit and to adventure. And so that's really, I think, where it took off. The mountains were being touted as a wonderful place for healthy climate, for cures for respiratory diseases. You heard all kinds of claims back in the day. Particularly, the more I did research, I figured out McDowell County's tourism is sort of related to a lot of other counties' tourism as well. So we'll intertwine some of that together, but some of the decisions made elsewhere really impacted our county here. But overall, it was, people were really coming up to be healthy and to find these cures. And curiosity continued, and by the age of the railroad in the 1880s, that really brought the people, and that to me is, in my mind, the first boom of tourism was the early railroad in the late 1800s, the early 1900s. That was really the first tourism boom for McDowell County. You had basically the Round Knob Hotel. That people are probably familiar with that. That was built in 1884. It burned in 1903. It was a summer retreat and a winter hunting lodge for people. Andrews Geyser was close by. It was developed as really a monument to the railroad, to the builders of the railroad. And so this was really an important piece for our tourism foundation. People came from all over the country. There was a railroad that left from Ridgecrest to take people up to the top of Mount Mitchell, believe it or not, at one point. There was a railroad that ran up there, and you've seen probably some of the pictures when you go up to their displays of that. Train stations came into Asheville, and one of those passengers was George Vanderbilt and his ailing mother, Maria Louisa. She came really to specifically get better from her disease, and that brought George Vanderbilt here, and that was probably one of the first ushering in the age of conservation in our area, which will play an important role later on as we talk about things. And then by 1885, we talked about the Round Hill Hotel. I'll try to remember to advance the slides while I talk, but the Round Hill Hotel, again, built in 1885 or 1884, and then by 1885, you had a 166-room hotel called the Cloudland Hotel that sat atop Roan Mountain, believe it or not. That was quite a feat, if you could think about that. It straddled the North Carolina-Tennessee line. It invited visitors to experience cool mountain air, wonderful views, natural surroundings. It really had a pub up there that straddled the line, and one story goes the sheriff patrolled the North Carolina side of the room to make sure that the drinkers stayed over in Tennessee. So it goes back, way back, so we can all appreciate that, I guess. One of the advertisements on how to get to the Cloudland Hotel talked about conveyances can be obtained at Marion on the Western North Carolina Railroad, 45 miles away. So basically, even at that time, people were taking the railroad from Marion up to the Cloudland Hotel in the late 1800s. I think the wind and the the conditions up there finally did the hotel in, and they basically closed it, I think around 1910 or so. I don't have that in my notes here, but it didn't last forever. It was good for a little while, but if you go up there now, you see a little bit of the foundation, and that's about it. But really, it was a nice, one of the earliest places that I can really talk about that it was beautiful. You know, it had a bowling green, it had a croquet courts, it had gardens, so you can really talk about tourism in that respect. Hotels to serve that growing demand sprouted up here in Marion too. Places like the Marion Inn in 1908. You had the Fleming Hotel back on North Main Street, and then you had the 42-room Mariana Hotel, which opened in 1910. And in that same year, the Switzerland Inn opened up on the, predating the Parkway in 1910. Places like the Catawba Fish and Game Preserve thrived right here in Old Fort, and Salty the Bear greeted visitors up on Point Lookout, which was Highway 70, Old 70 at the time, where you could actually drive up. That was really the early age, and then moving on, we talk about something called the crest of the Blue Ridge Highway. And in 1906, the crest of the Blue Ridge Highway was designated as a scenic 350-mile road that was going to connect Marion, Virginia to Tallulah, Georgia. It was the idea of the director of the North Carolina Geological and Economic Survey, and his name was Joseph Pratt, and he designed it to pass through Blowing Rock, Grandfather Mountain, Linville, on into Asheville. Portions of the road around Spruce Pine were graded and partially open when World War I shut it down. So basically, as we'll find out, a lot of things were affected by war and the Depression. But that was one of the first casualties that happened, was the end of the crest of the Blue Ridge Highway. You can still see portions of the road, though, right around Spruce Pine or near the Gillespie Gap. There's a 1 mile segment on the Blue Ridge Parkway between mileposts 317 and 318 that does follow Pratt's grade. So when you're up there, take a look at that. Moving on, we talk about another major part of our county, which has been mentioned here, Pisgah National Forest, one of the largest national forest in the east, over 90,000 acres. And it was really a result of an important piece of legislation called the Weeks Act. And so some of you probably are familiar with that. If you drive up into the forest, you'll see that. It was signed into law by President William Taft in 1911. It was permitted the federal government to purchase land, private land, in order to protect the headwaters of rivers and streams. And the states pretty much had been banned from purchasing land. That was one thing that the Constitution at the time didn't allow. But really, the first national forest was created by lands acquired from the Weeks Act. Pisgah National Forest was that first forest officially created by a proclamation from President Woodrow Wilson on October 17, 1916. But how we got there was pretty difficult. Popular vacation spots in New Hampshire's White Mountains, the Southern Appalachians also happened to be near areas that were affected by bad logging practices. Upset by what they saw, concerned citizens established regionally focused organizations like the Appalachian National Park Association, formed in 1899 in North Carolina, and then the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire's Forests, founded in 1901. Both groups immediately started petitioning the federal government to buy land in both areas and to protect it as a national park. In 1900, Congress gave $5,000 to the Secretary of Agriculture, James Wilson, to investigate the forest conditions of the Southern Appalachian Mountains and the Western North Carolina area and adjacent states. And basically, those who champion private property rights could point to what George Vanderbilt had been doing just outside of Asheville during the 1890s as an interest in preserving and protecting Southern Appalachians growing area around Asheville. Vanderbilt had quietly purchased 100,000 acres of cut-over woodlands to add to his Biltmore estate. Many physical conservatives agreed with House Speaker Joe Cannon when he declared that there would be not 1 cent spent for scenery by the federal government. After making a little headway in Congress, politicians basically felt like that was something that could be changed overall. Some wanted to only block legislation, but dismantle. They didn't only want to dismantle the legislation, but the Forest Service in general. But after making a little headway, the Appalachian National Park Association and the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests shifted tactics. And to get around that, they used states' rights. And in 1903, they persuaded 5 southern states to pass legislation to grant their consent to purchase lands by the federal government. So basically, the states led this and gave that permission to these groups. The cause also received a boost when they did establish the U.S. Forest Service in 1905, and then the placement of the forest under a professional management agency. Meanwhile, nature provided a case study for the important role that forests do play in protecting watersheds, and in 1907, heavy rains brought flood waters racing down a river in West Virginia, which caused over $100 million in damage. Sounds pretty familiar, I guess, to us there. Leadership on the issue came from a surprising source. Congressman John Weeks, a Republican from Massachusetts, was a former naval officer and a successful banker. He was elected to the House in 1905, and then by 2 years later, he was appointed to the House Committee on Agriculture by Speaker Cannon, the person that was against that earlier. Speaker Cannon told him that if you can frame a forestry bill which provides a businessman, that supports a businessman that you are willing to support, I will do what I can to get authority and the opportunity to consider it in the House. The man who once declared not 1 cent for scenery had changed his mind, and it was only a matter of time that passed. And in 1908, the Weeks introduced a bill proposing that the federal government purchase lands near the headwaters of navigable streams using receipts that are already established by the Forest Service. The bill went nowhere, but the following July, Weeks amended the bill, adding that the purchased lands would be permanently maintained by federal reserves as a way to protect headwaters of of navigable waterways. And that was a move that really talked about commerce, and that was really the key instigator that allowed this to move forward. And in December, Senator John Gallagher of New Hampshire introduced a new bill in the Senate, and with the Speaker's approval, the final bill passed, and then in February 15th of 1911, it passed, and then a few weeks later, Taft signed it into law. So that really created the first national forest here in the East, and you can see some erosion here that we talk about that really does preserve the headwaters of these streams. And here is the dedication of the actual Weeks track. This was from the Forest Service archives right here. Next thing I will talk about that really we don't think about influencing our area in the county as much, but is Great Smoky Mountain National Park. By the early 1920s, many locals were already talking and asking themselves why there weren't national parks in the East. With the abundance of scenic beauty, the Appalachian Mountains were as scenic as anything in the West. There were photographers such as George Massa, Jim Thompson, writers like Horace Kephart who were writing about the area, photographing it. There's an excellent photography exhibit right now at the Mountain Gateway Museum that shows some of Massa's photographs. These were really instrumental in talking about the beauty of the area. And it really came down to attracting a wider audience. And then by 1923, the AAA Club of Knoxville was calling for a national park in the Smokies and formed the Great Smoky Mountain Conservation Association. The Department of Interior was also searching for wilderness sites in the southern Appalachians to be considered for national parks. And it really didn't include the Smokies. In early 1924, a meeting was held in Asheville where the Southern Appalachian National Park Committee was starting to study really the Grandfather Mountain Linville Gorge area as consideration for a national park. The Great Smoky Mountains Conservation Association was also invited to this meeting in Asheville, and as you can probably see, the rest is history at this point. What became the national park was really due to lobbying more than anything. They invited the senators and the legislators to actually experience the Smoky Mountains, so they brought them over there, and so that really shows the value of bringing people right into your area. But we came that close to having a national park right on our border of the county. The Blue Ridge Parkway, that is really the next sort of catalyst for us that influenced our area. The Great Depression also brought opportunity in the area of the Blue Ridge Parkway. The scenic road had been proposed before as the crest of the Blue Ridge, but with the creation of the Skyline Drive up in Shenandoah National Park, when President Roosevelt visited Shenandoah, it was a senator from Virginia that proposed to extend the Skyline Drive all the way to Smoky Mountain National Park. And so on November the 24th, 1933, the Department of Interior approved the construction of the parkway as a public works project. Of course, the route had to be decided first, and a new war between the states broke out, with both states and notably Asheville Chamber of Commerce recognizing the tremendous value and potential that the road would bring for tourists. After more surveys and lobbying efforts, the Virginia-North Carolina route was approved, and in 1935, construction began near Cumberland Knob in North Carolina. By 1966, 95% of the parkway was complete, with the last piece completed in 1987 up near Grandfather Mountain. These are just some great photos of the parkway itself. I think many of you might remember this. It's still there. It's in bad shape up at Crabtree Falls, an amphitheater that still exists just off the road as you walk over towards the campground. And then, of course, this is the Linville Bridge back in the early days as well. So another huge area for us that I think is really important. You can see here actually a ranger interpreter. This is giving a pottery demonstration up at the Minerals Museum back in the 1940s. And here's one of the early ranger cars that patrols
It's way
the
cooler.
Blue Ridge Parkway.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll mention, really talking about our area, are two of our lakes that we're all familiar with, Lake James and Lake Tahoma. Lake Tahoma was built in 1924 by the Buck Creek Development Company. It was really designed as a resort community with families. It had 4 miles of shoreline. It had a casino that was built in the lake. That was actually the only official building that was completed by the original developers before they went bankrupt because of the Great Depression in 1929. So that pretty much put an end to their plans. It has since survived, and as you know, there's homes up there around the lake, but not in that resort community setting I think that they had originally intended. The Little Switzerland area, another sort of resort community built in the early 1900s that was laid out and plotted for homes. And the Duke Energy, really, their history began as the Catawba Power Company and the Catawba Hydro Station, which is now known as Lake Wiley. That's considered the birthplace of Duke Power. But James Duke led a group after a historic flood of 1916. They decided they need some reservoirs to stem flooding downstream. And so James Duke led a group to build a system of lakes and dams along the Catawba River to generate electricity and would also drive economic growth. And so that flood of 1916 helped prompt the now Southern Power Company to pursue that series of interlocked reservoirs. And in 1919, Lake James was built. There's a shot of that. It was named after James B. Duke, one of the original founders of Duke Power. In 1939, they established a forestry department to manage land and promote good stewardship. And through time, Lake James State Park and many other access points along the lake are now complete, including the recent Black Bear Campground, which was also built by Duke Power. Pretty much. So a lot of history there. But today, as you can see, just wrapping up, all of these things sort of tie back into the county in some way or another, and I think it really provides a huge legacy for us moving forward. And we're going to be very happy when the parkway opens again, hopefully this late fall. So that's all I have for you, but thank you very much.
So, thank you guys. Great information, lots of very entertaining information. And we thank you again for coming. I guess if anybody had some questions that they didn't ask when people were talking, or if you would like to just talk with the individuals as we break up. But thank you so much for coming, and we really appreciate it.